Welcome back, tribe. I have one here called The Rise of the TRADWIFE. Is Gen Z bringing back gender roles?
All right, guys out there, who would you rather marry? A girl boss or a TRADWIFE? It seems like Gen Z is choosing the latter. According to a new article in The Federalist, the rise of the massively popular TRADWIFE or traditional wife trend on Instagram depicting women happily remaining at home and raising the kids is following a reorientation of priorities for women away from the workforce and into the wifery. One TRADWIFE, Hannah Nealman, has nearly 9 million followers on Instagram who attentively tune into content featuring her life as a mom on a hog farm in Utah. Here's one.
Look at the radical video we got here. She's making bread, right? With a baby. In a kitchen. She's holding the sisterhood back. Unbelievable. This is what makes the news in the Western world today. A woman choosing to be at home with her family.
Whether this lifestyle is possible or even desirable. Nealman's is married to the son of JetBlue's founder with a net worth of nearly $400 million. This has led to accusations that this lifestyle only works for the ultra-rich. Others say the rise of the TRADWIFE is just an excuse to push back on the gains made by feminists in the modern era and return women to a more subservient role.
Here to discuss is author of this Federalist piece and a research associate at the Heritage Foundation, Emma Waters. Emma, welcome back to Rising.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Right. So a lot of this trend, I think, started during the pandemic, and a lot of women ended up leaving the workforce after their jobs went remote. This was talked about in the media as sort of a tragic trend about how they needed to actually figure out how to get women back to work. But a lot of women that I've talked to say that the pandemic basically reminded them that they actually enjoy being at home and enjoy taking care of their kids.
Shocker.
Where did your inspiration for this piece come from, and what has been your experience in terms of the research that you've been doing on the rise of this TRADWIFE trend?
So I'll be the first to admit that I was actually highly skeptical of the TRADWIFE influencers for a long time and really critical of them. So similar to some of the criticisms that you hear, it's unrealistic. They're playing into a stereotype and they're trying to paint this one vision of womanhood, of what it means to be feminine. That's maybe just not representative of what most women actually want. But as I was observing COVID and then even just the last few years, the changes we've seen and the way that women prioritize their time, I started to realize that even though these TRADWIFE influencer accounts are usually showing the most extreme version of what it means to be a feminine homemaker at home with all of her children, that in many ways it was actually tapping into this deep need within Gen Z. I mean, the fact that she has 9 million followers, and I'm guessing a lot of those are moms of kids who probably aren't getting to live the kind of lifestyle that she is, that there is this inherent
Or living a version of her life and want to see like-minded content. They're always trying to push back and assume that women are so different, that they do want to be out in the workforce, that they want to slave away, dude, in a cubicle because it's so refreshing to be free and brave and strong. That's not what it is. Most women want to be stay-at-home mothers. Most women want this. You tell them they shouldn't be doing this. You act like there's an alternative which is suitable for them when it actually isn't, and it leads to depression, it leads to overconsumption of pharmaceutical pills, it leads to loneliness, and then lashing out in society with crazy ideas such as hypersexualization, giving their body away to any man for nothing in return because that's strong. That's them fighting the system. That's rebellion. No, you idiot. You got indoctrinated into an ideology which is against your nature, and it's leading you to a path of self-destruction. And now, because of the crabs in a bucket mentality, your decisions have consequences. actions cannot be taken back. And now you drag all the rest of the women down with you to make the same mistakes you did because you can no longer have the family. No man is looking at you as a long-term prospect. That's the sad truth. We are different. It's okay that we're different. When we come together, we make a whole, which is better than the parts. We no longer push that message anymore. We don't even live in reality anymore because if you cut your junk off and you wear a dress, you're a woman. If you cut your breasts off and parade yourself as a man, we should say that you actually are one biologically. Isn't that crazy?
Parents and like deep hunger among women to really be at home with their children. And I think many women experience the burnout of girl boss culture, of the corporate full-time work lifestyle.
Shocker.
Rushing the kids off to school.
I'm so glad they're saying this now on the news. I don't know how popular the Hill is, but at least it's being talked about by women, because if it comes from a man, it's misogyny.
To daycare, you're getting to work, you're doing the best job that you can, and then you have to hurry and go pick them back up, and then dinner's ready, and then it just goes on. And COVID introduced this restful time where all of a sudden you could slow down, you could take time with your kids and really enjoy some of the more domestic arts that many aspects of our modern and especially urban life don't allow. And so all of that together and just seeing the happiness that a lot of women were deriving from this, I thought it was something really important to consider more closely.
You know, in the state I'm in right now, the state of Iowa, childcare is $865 a month on average. It seems really telling to me that we've seen kind of a correlation with this glorification, if you will, of stay-at-home mom influencing, right? Kind of romanticizing the idea of staying at home. I'm wondering, you know, how much of this is coping with high childcare costs and not really having much of a choice to work a job where you're making potentially a similar amount of money instead, you know, just staying at home and doing that work yourself instead of paying someone else out. I just don't think Gen Z would really want to go back to the 1950s, which I think is where a lot of this TRADWIFE core comes from, when women couldn't have their own bank account or buy a car. You know, it wasn't until the 1960s that you could, but only with your husband's signature. And then finally in 1974, you know,
But again, it's irrelevant because they are going back. They are even actually going to the 1950s aesthetic. That's how much they want it back. They don't care about your bank accounts, any of this. It's irrelevant. The salary gains, the bank accounts, the work opportunities are irrelevant when it comes to family, which is what they want to nurture and bring up. They don't give a shit about all those other things. They have those now, and they choose to go back. Do you understand? This is why. Because they know what really counts. The wool got pulled over their eyes, and now they finally are not blind to the truth anymore. And they go, you know what? Because COVID gave me a new perspective on the world, because I got to take some time off, and I got to be around my family more, and I wasn't rushed by the hustle and bustle of modernity and working like a slave, and I got to see for a second, hit pause, and I got to see what really matters in my life, which was my family. You know what? I prefer this. So it's like, wow, you give a woman real choices to make, and she ends up making the ones that are most aligned with her gender role. Isn't that wild? But until then, you have to just keep distracting everybody. You know, keeping up with the Joneses, surviving, got to pay taxes, got to go to work, got to make sure rent's paid, got to do all this shit that distracts you from what really matters, your family. Because the moment it stops distracting you, oh, look at the choices they make.
It became legal for women to have their own finances. And so I just don't think a lot of Gen Z women want to go back to that. But I can understand, you know, whether it's financial constraints, meaning you're going to stay home and you want to romanticize your life for the internet, or you just like the idea of being home with the kids. But I'm skeptical that people want to go back to the actual world legally of what the 1950s was.
What kind of argument is this? This is another brainwashed NPC. Nobody's arguing to go back when you didn't have bank accounts. What they're saying is, despite all the gains we've made as women, nothing replaces family and raising children. I don't care about the bank accounts. I don't care about the salary, the jobs, all these opportunities, like I said before. Despite having all this, my choice is made. My kids matter more. She can't get it through her head. This is the NPC brought on here to spew the mainstream narrative of how the TRADWIFE is simply a flavor of the month fad that will go away soon because nobody really wants to do this stuff anyways. They're just at home pretending to love this to get views online, which I'm sure there's a bunch of women doing that, but 9 million followers on that chick's account tells me there's a real demand here. A ton of women would love to do that full time, would love to stay at home with the kids, but the economic realities of the world today are stopping them from doing it. What gain is that by feminism? If anything, it shows that if the economics were in balance and one person could provide for the whole family, a lot of women would go back to being stay-at-homes. But because of the economic situation, we're forced to have dual income homes and send our kids off to daycare, spending tens of thousands of dollars a year for some other people to neglect our kids. Wow. Progress, baby.
What's your sense of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And notably, credit card debt did not begin to skyrocket in the United States until women could have their own credit card without their husband's signature. So I'm not advocating we go back, but I think there are some funny trends there. But when it comes to actual childcare, I think you're absolutely right. There are a lot of women who realize that I'm effectively working just to pay someone else to watch my kids. And while many women certainly have jobs that they really love and enjoy, a lot of times they come to the end of the month and they're like, I'm not sure that this is really worth it. And on top of that, I'm missing out on all the really sweet memories with my children that someone else is getting. My mother-in-law once said that she realized that everyone else was getting the best part of her kids. And then by the time she got them, they were tired, they were grumpy, and they were ready to go to bed. And frankly, she was too. And that's just not the sort of life she wanted to build with her children. And so if you look at studies that American Compass and the Institute for Family Studies have done, they've actually found that for a lot of women, sort of like self-reported goals, most women report wanting to work something between like a part-time job or just like a really flexible role. And for women in like lower incomes, they just don't want to work and have one partner bring in the money and then they can run the household, which like truly is a real skill in and of itself to run the household on a strict budget, to make ends meet and to really provide a beautiful life for your family. So I think to your point, no, most women don't want to go back to a space where you're really just sitting in the home. And I think a lot of people would argue that wasn't the 1950s, but I think it's important to go back to the even truer vision here, that ultimately men and women, husbands and wives, are called to join together in this shared vision of the home, this shared vision that they're called to as partners, and that they're to pursue that together. So this idea that women are at home cleaning and men are out doing the really important work was really a rare phenomenon even in the 1950s that clearly did not sit well with women. And so what I think is exciting is that the overcorrection that some of these TRADWIFE influencers are presenting is hopefully bringing people back to a happy, normal state where women can engage in meaningful work, but also have time to raise their children, to be present with their husbands, and to build a community. Think of all the stats of loneliness and the lack of community, where even women now are reporting fewer and fewer close friends. It's hard to ignore that trend if you're thinking about full-time work, because frankly, when you're in the office all the time, like that is where your energy is going. So I'm hoping that like the outcome.
Right. Imagine spending 9 months pregnant, going through the pains of labor, pushing out a baby, only to go back to work and give somebody else your kid and pay them for it. The sacrifice of childbirth, all it entails, only to go back to work so a stranger can look after your child. Does that sound like an ideal for motherhood? Do you think any woman after giving birth wants that outcome? It's forced on them.
Here is that we're just able to like reclaim a much happier and balanced life where women are able to do the work that they care about, but also receive the support and flexibility that they need to really build this anti-fragile and very happy life for themselves.
I'm still cracking up about the credit card debt comment because women do be spending, but a couple of statistics I've been seeing. So the percentage of mothers who identify as stay-at-home parents has increased by about 10 percentage points in the last year to 25%, but we still see that 56% of U.S. mothers prefer to stay home. So I definitely think there is something to the argument from some that this lifestyle could be prohibitively expensive as we increasingly fall into this two-income trap. So what are some of the policies perhaps being proposed on a state or federal level that could make it easier for women to pursue perhaps part-time work or staying home entirely without sacrificing the fact that it is very expensive with inflation and the cost of housing now to just have one individual working outside the home?
Yeah, and so unfortunately, under the Biden administration, there really seems to be this targeted attack against working mothers. So there are a number of recent legislation or regulatory measures that have been introduced that I actually cover in an article for The Telegraph on Bidenomics and how it's forcing women back into work when maybe they don't actually want to be there. And so unfortunately, you're seeing things like the IRS is requiring reporting on even small purchases through PayPal or through Venmo, where a lot of women who work contracted or flexible jobs selling through Etsy or doing other work like that are able to actually have a really good flexible income that works for their schedule. They're now adding more reporting requirements, more time to it to make it difficult. There are a few other measures that they've introduced that, again, would just add more barriers to women trying to find these creative options for work. And on the positive side, that's what we have to be seen. I know a lot of people would really like to see a way of transforming daycare subsidies in a state and making it like an ESA or an education savings account. So the money that the state has quote unquote set aside for you to send your kids to daycare for free, what if you actually just gave that to the families and let them decide how they spend their daycare money? So maybe that's paying the mom to be home with her children, or maybe that's having a grandmother or another close friend be involved. And I think things like that really empower parents to spend their money and to utilize the resources that they have on a federal and state level in a way that really reflects their values. I think that's the direction a lot of policymakers are interested in going, and that's where we really need to encourage them to go.
You know, policy-wise, I make a lot of my money off of social media. I'm an independent contractor, and a lot of my official income comes through PayPal. So I think it makes sense to have that taxed as formal income. As far as childcare being covered as a part of, you know, women working, but not being offered if the woman's staying home, it makes sense to me because we have all kinds of write-offs related to the cost of doing business, right? And so if you are going to work, whether as an independent contractor or otherwise, you know, daycare does become a cost. We have seen it go up tremendously, 32% since 2019. It's much more expensive. So if you want to work, it becomes almost a prohibitive thing, having kids and being a mom. And I think, you know, policy.
I'm surprised it hasn't trended into Americans reigniting relationships with grandparents, because why would you spend all this money for daycare when you could just move in the mother or the father-in-law and have them help out watching the kids? I mean, this is how it's done in the rest of the world. Quite literally, your parents help you raise your kids as well, because you have to go to work. Your wife may have to go to work. You leave them with your mom or your dad. You know, they're a grandparent. This is how it used to be in America, I'm assuming, because in the rest of the world, it's still done this way. Grandparents are very much a part of your life in the nuclear family. I don't understand where this definition of the nuclear family got twisted into it's just the kid and his parents, because in the rest of the world, the quote nucleus of a family is considered everybody by extension, because that's how close they are. A majority of the time, you're living with grandparents. I was raised living with my grandparents. They were just as part of the family as my actual parents, that close. Uncles, aunts, cousins, always over all the time, every single day. And this, I still see it in some of my Hispanic friends in the United States. They're very close and their families are known to be very large, and everybody is always at each other's houses. That is the nuclear family experience. You're almost never by yourself, isolated, in the way the standard American family is. And that is a sad state to be in. And they wonder why the statistics are headed in the directions they're heading. Now, why after COVID, after we've seen how unimportant we are to a bunch of people, how most of our jobs were designated not critical, and so we couldn't work, and then we were giving out almost nothing, $1,200 in one whole year or something like that. After seeing all that and penny pinching and getting crushed by inflation and rising rental markets and housing markets and prices of groceries and gas and all this that we didn't think or have not thought on a national scale, like, you know what, we should start regressing, not even regressing. We should start going back to basics of let's include the rest of the family in this. Why don't we have the rest of the family help? Instead of paying strangers to neglect my kid, I could actually give my kid a good upbringing with a lot of emotional investment from their own blood, from our own family. I don't understand. We keep talking about childcare and daycare and all this stuff, but you can save a ton of money by involving the family at large.
Corrections so that that's not the case are generally good. But I think we should really touch on the point that actually the TRADWIFE influencers are working. It is a job to be an influencer. They're, I'm sure, making a lot of money off of brand deals and just the viewership on their content. And I think that it's probably a ton of work to edit all of those videos, to post them, to interact with an audience. And so what do you make of the fact that a lot of these TRADWIFE influencers are actually probably working during most of their waking hours?
Yeah. And this is, I think, the thing that initially really bothered me about the influencer movement, because it seemed almost disingenuous.
It's not real work. I can tell you right now, making this video is not real work. I've worked on the wall, doing stucco, on top of roofs, fixing up holes 40 feet high on chimneys, swapping out my shirts 5-6 times a day because of the amount of sweat from all the humidity and working outside, and having my hands shake, and seeing it in my father doing it decades prior to me. I know what real work looks like. Editing these fucking videos for social media, this shit is just stupid easy. I sit down in a chair, I watch a video, and I comment on it. This is not real work. I'm blessed that I can do this. I'm grateful for the people that tune in. I'm happy that people care about what I have to say, or that it resonates and they find some form of value in it, because I may be distilling some information in some manner that helps them. That I am extremely grateful for that. I'll never call this a job. Making a fucking TikTok video in your house showing you cooking some fucking food up isn't work, okay? The NPC bot over there on the left, far left of the screen, is always trying to make this attack the TRADWIFE movement as if it's some sort of farce. Because in her internal programming, it goes against everything she's ever bet all the chips on, being a strong boss babe, and her life is stressful, and she has to get on here and defend her ideology and her lifestyle. Some women genuinely enjoy being at home. Most of them do. And making up a video, recording yourself, which most women are already surgically attached to this goddamn device anyway, do every day when they take selfies of themselves, videos at the gym, videos of the food they're eating, all this other shit that we all do with our phones in our hands at social media today. It's natural to share. They just took it a step further and they became popular. Why? Because they're doing something that strikes a nerve deep in the hearts of many women. It either brings out extreme, bitter jealousy at the fact that this woman doesn't have to break her back and go to work, or love, adoration, and longing for ability to live a similar lifestyle. And that's why it gets so popular. That's why it's growing so fast, because those two are clashing together all the time. The engagement in the comment section is going to be like 50-50. She's a pick-me. Oh my God, she's just doing this to shit on the rest of us that go to work. Must be nice to be rich. Setting us back 50 years, internalized misogyny, this. And then the other half is like, wow, you go. Stay-at-home motherhood, so beautiful. Wish I could do it full-time. Or I'm also a stay-at-home mother. It's the most rewarding thing I get to do, blah, blah. And they're just battling it out in the comments. And it's all women, because the men in the comment section goes, I wish one day I could be able to provide my wife with this. I hope one day when I get married and have kids that my wife doesn't have to work. They go, wow, where are there more women like this? I'd like to find a woman that wants to stay at home and watch the family too. And that pisses a certain side of the aisle off. And we know exactly who that is. And that's why this is exploding. That's why this conversation is being had right now, because it is picking up steam, because people have seen behind the veil. This is a clown show that we're living in. None of this resonates internally with anybody. Men don't want to be feminine. Women don't want to be masculine. We all want to start families and have kids, but the way the system is set up is making that shit damn near impossible. They've destroyed intimacy. They've destroyed relationships. They've destroyed the sanctity of marriage. They've destroyed what it means to be loyal, what it means to grow with somebody into old age, what it means to build a legacy, what it means to come together and work for common solutions, a greater goal than oneself. They've destroyed everything, all for economic gain. All the money gets siphoned to the top. They get richer. We're all getting poorer. That's the trap, man.
That they're saying you should quit your job, go be at home and play with your children, while they themselves are working incredibly long hours to promote themselves, to provide the content, to stay engaged with their followers, like you were saying, is really just in every moment of your waking day job.
Oh, it isn't.
But then it really, I think, struck on a deep.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. This is, again, a lie purported by this side of the aisle for some reason. I went today, had a great day. I am in Dubai. You could see the hotel behind me. I'm in like a tropical little environment here. There's a beach. There's lagoons everywhere. I went and ate went on a nice walk, did what I wanted to do. Now I sit down and I make this. It's probably going to take me 30 minutes. Don't even know how long this recording has been going for. That's it, dude. That's all it takes. Don't let them trick you into thinking that these women are doing this only for clout. There are genuine, and a ton of them, women that are just showing you an alternative lifestyle that we used to live and how much more rewarding it is for them. Hitting the record button on this is not hard. We've all done it before. And then you post it. It goes viral for a reason.
Deeper level is that women have always worked, right? There's never been like a true ideal that women really shouldn't work, save for maybe a brief period in the 20th century. But instead, understanding that women have always had jobs working on farms, working with their husbands in blacksmith shops, right? Writing, and that also raising your children and educating them. And again, running a very productive household is a legitimate job that I think we don't spend enough time talking about. And frankly, this is something that I'm really interested in myself, of learning, living in Washington, D.C. in a very urban area. What does it mean to have a productive household where we're actually working and being very faithful with what we've been given in a way that we actually are able to show something for our time, right? That home is not just a landing pad, a place that we come to rest for leisure, and then we go outside of the home to do our real work. So I agree that there's sometimes the frustration in some of their messaging. But again, hopefully this ultimately communicates to Gen Z and to future generations that like work is good, that we all want and have this desire to work, that it boosts our self-esteem in a really positive way. But that there are certain kinds of jobs that do align better with what women want. And there are certain kinds of jobs that seem to really go against that. And so that's why I really highlight.
That's why the gender pay gap exists. Because women choose jobs that have more work-life balance. Women don't want to give their lives away at work, sleep under the desk, compete with other men in the similar manner that it takes, like 100-hour weeks, for example, to make it to the top, name partner, something like that. And they're actually smarter for it. But to say that there's a pay gap simply based on skill or what's in between your legs is absolutely insane. There is not. Google was overpaying their developers that were women. When they did an audit just to make sure they weren't underpaying women, they found out that most of their, I think it was entry level or first, second year software developers that were men were being underpaid. Haha, imagine that. And again, look at the comments. How does a woman wanting to be a housewife get conflated to returning to the 1950s? That's what I'm saying. And this looks like it was a woman. I was a hardcore entrepreneur for 7 years before I had kids. I was the feminist gold standard. I always felt like, aren't I supposed to be fulfilled now? Maybe when my company got a little bigger. I felt like I worked hard and my lifestyle looked super cool. Fast forward to today, I'm a domestic executive. I stay at home and run the house. My kids are well fed, well loved, great humans. My husband is the most inspired and is the best shape he has ever been, and so am I. I get like zero sleep, and I'm often covered in food from sticky hands, but I feel a deep sense of accomplishment and worthiness I never had before. I feel like an adult. It's funny to say it like that. I'm so glad I made the sacrifice to be a stay-at-home mom. We lost a third of our income, but we gained 10 times the wealth of having a healthy, happy family. Chef's kiss on that one. I love how they are making a trend for something that's totally normal, as in being a wife. Nailed it. Even the comment sections know. I was raised by a tradwife and became one. It's hard work to do it well, but incredibly satisfying and fulfilling. Raising little people to be awesome humans is so important. Making one's home inviting and hospitable for family and friends takes diligence. All this would be impossible if you're gone all day, I would think. Indeed.